My name's David Galler, and I work as a doctor, but that certainly doesn't define me. I'd hate to be defined as a doctor, just. I live here in Auckland, and I work at Middlemore Hospital in that job as an intensive care doctor. And I wake up moderately early, 6 o'clock, 6:30 or something, I have taken Emma coffee in bed every morning for 36 years. So I make coffee in the morning, I used to listen to the radio actually, Morning Report, but it makes me so furious that I've decided not to listen to that kind of crap anymore. So I will listen to a whole lot of music.
Up those stone steps I climb, hail this joyful day's return.
I have a large collection of shirts that are a little bit similar to this one. And I think probably I've got about 112 of them. There are some wacko ones in here, eh? Let me just have a look. Let's have a look. I like that one at work because of the blood. You can't sort of see it when you get splattered. It's just because it's got all those red dots. There's another one. So that's pretty bright too, isn't it? So there's no shortage. And there's plenty in the wash. But I've always dressed a little bit this way in my work practice, and that is actually a little bit unusual, I have to say. It's very easy to just put on the uniform and get lost as just another doctor, and it's safe and it's easy. You can hide behind it. People have their own styles, you just have to do that. And I certainly have mine.
Made of stone.
But I'm never blasé about being on call. You can't be, you just can't be. It's too terrifying actually, but it's serious shit, and you want to do it well. All of us at work feel the same way, we want to do really well, and we want to do well for ourselves, but we want to do well for the patients. It's Sunday morning this morning, about 11 o'clock, I was the on-call intensive care doctor last night and during the day, so I came to work yesterday at about 8, and it's now 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, and I've had probably about an hour and a half sleep. It's been a pretty busy day and a pretty busy night, and I'm starting to feel pretty sleepy now, and I'm looking forward to going home and lying in a bath with a whiskey, and that's what I'm going to do shortly. I didn't take anything particularly seriously when I left school. They were the days, when you could afford not to. University for me served as a means of, finding my way in the world. I was a bus driver for a while. When I left university, I didn't quite know what to do with myself. Wellington was a pretty cool city, in those days. It still is a pretty cool city. And there were trolley buses and diesel buses. And we would meet every morning at the bus depot. And we would sort of draw straws to see who would drive to the Seatoon cake shop. And we would have cakes and morning tea, and then we'd take turns at whizzing around the city doing different routes. And it was incredible fun. It was really good fun. I enjoyed the job. I had a little library on my dashboard. I read a lot at the turnarounds, the bus turnarounds. In fact, there was the odd occasion when I didn't even pick up passengers naughtily, to get to a particular point because I wanted to finish a book. Isn't that terrible? I'd driven the buses for a reasonable period of time, and it became pretty evident to me it wasn't a job for life. Polyester trousers, vinyl seats, hemorrhoids, that's not a life for me. I had some pressure from different angles. My parents were kind of a bit anxious about the fact that I was a bus driver. When you've got Polish, Jewish, refugee parents, immigrants, you don't have a lot of choice. You get that pressure to do well and to take on some kind of professional job like being a doctor. So Jenny, you're going to come on the camera with me, okay?
No, I am not.
All right, good. So you're not going to come on the camera with me. It's for a school project, so you're being really mean to those nice young men. Well, I've been at Middlemore for 26 years, and it's grown enormously in that time. It's become quite a different place. But at the heart of it is, a really good decent, hard-working group of people. Hi, how are you? It's all right, no. Well, intensive care is an interesting specialty area. Intensive care medicine essentially concentrates on the immediate resuscitation and support of critically ill and injured people. So we support those people who have essentially various forms of organ failure. During the last 24 hours, we've seen all sorts of different people during that time. We've looked after the people here in this ICU, and we've admitted quite a number of people from the wards and also from the emergency department. One woman died, one woman nearly died, and I'm not quite sure whether she will survive, and she's here being treated. I'll just pull up something here. So let's have a look at this scan. She's been really sick overnight. See how she's looking. The chest is the least of her problems actually, so it's quite good. She's got some streaky changes throughout her chest, but I don't think that's her problem. Little secrets that are hidden in x-rays. People's past lives. Quite interesting, eh? Intensive care is actually about buying time. In a funny sort of way, I say that we don't make them better. We provide the kinds of circumstances for them to get better if they are able to. And whether they are able to or not depends on, a whole lot of things, like who they are, what's the nature of the illness, how severe has it been. And so there's a whole lot of factors there that are to some extent out of our control. So we just create that environment where people, it's like gardening, I say to people, you chop off the dead bits, you water them, add in a few electrolytes and some feed, and you support them and you hope the bloody thing grows. It's sort of like that, so it's, I like to see it that way actually, I like to see it that way. It's an interesting place to work. It's odd for me because I actually prefer the people to what I do to them. There's no question about that. But there is a sort of immediate gratification, involved in this work, in the sense that there's someone there who hasn't got a blood pressure, you can give them one. Can't breathe, you can help them with their breathing, The kidneys don't work well, you can dialyse them. It is, incredibly rewarding. That baby there is 3 kilos and was born at 38 weeks and is a couple of weeks old. And this baby here is 13 months old, this child is 13 months old. 2 of them had respiratory infections that are normally associated with overcrowding and poor housing. A third child has developmental delay and came in with a seizure disorder and stopped breathing and needed to be intubated and ventilated for a period of time, and we took a breathing tube out this morning. And you can see up there on the monitor that the child's heart rate is pretty good, 124, and respiratory rate's 48, which is good because it was 90, which is quite a big improvement for this child because last night that child was incredibly unwell. We've also seen lots of patients on the wards that we've been called to assess and look after. So it's been an incredibly busy time. The job of being a doctor is essentially to help people, and to help people you need to understand people. You need to understand that person and their family, and you need to make some kind of meaningful connection with them. Commonly, in the public system, in a really busy public system, it's quite hard to have those conversations, because no one structures in time in the public system to have those conversations. The workload is horrendous there, and it's a very big workload. It becomes quite crippling. I think it's very hard to maintain, your enthusiasm and your engagement when you are constantly facing an uphill battle. Morale goes up and down, and I'm not sure the morale in the public service generally is particularly good at the moment. They've chiselled away at the kinds of things that make working there pleasurable. We would often debrief over a cup of tea and ginger nuts. And one day we went to the ginger nut jar and it was empty, and it was soon after the mother of all budgets, And actually the hospital no longer provided ginger nuts. And so with that fell away the kind of debrief that we had. So those things have been steadily chipped away at. And so we're almost seen as, sort of cogs or units, to provide service. And those pleasures have, many of them have gone. The funding is nowhere near keeping up with the demand, and partly that's because we're not addressing the demand. So unless you address the demand, it's very hard to, continually mop up the consequences. People live their lives in the real world. They don't live their lives in a doctor's surgery. They live their lives in the real world. That's where health and wellness are embedded. You can't just sort of spend a life drinking Coca-Cola and eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and take a pill to keep you well. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You can't live in a house that's got mold on the walls and stay healthy. No matter how many antibiotics you take, it doesn't work that way. If you've got no money and you're working 3 jobs and you still can't, feed your kids, that's associated with quite poor health outcomes. And you can't take a pill for that, and you can't health it away. So these things are quite interlinked. So sort of sorting out these determinants of well-being in the community need to happen right from the outset, from the get-go in our lives. That's the kind of thing that will decrease the demands on the hospitals. There seems to be some recognition of that at higher levels, but like most of the policies, they piss around at the margins. They don't actually address them front on. The idea of having social investment for vulnerable people without dealing with the demand that drives them into vulnerability is kind of nuts. And one of the interesting things about New Zealand is that, and it happens every day at Middlemore Hospital with that throng at the front door, that fills every part of that hospital every day, that we have a chaos of social policies. That, so you take 2 steps forwards in health and you take 2 steps backwards in poverty. You take another 2 steps backward with, with shitty housing. And so we just go round and round. And we wonder why we have these intractable problems and nothing seems to get better. And I think all of us should have a conversation not about a flag, but actually about the kind of New Zealand that we value, the kind of New Zealand we want for our children and our grandchildren. What does that look like, and how do we get there? I find it extraordinary that we accept the status quo without railing against some of the things that are so egregiously wrong. So I look at the quality of the people who are running the show, and I shake my head, and I look at the indifference that people have towards them, saying, oh well, the other mob would be just as bad, is a really depressing thing. This idea of having a debate around the values that we wish to live by, or the kind of New Zealand we want for our children, would be a really productive thing to do. Is it acceptable that we've got long queues of people outside the city mission that stretch down to Queen Street? Is it acceptable that people are sleeping in cars and garages and under bridges? These kinds of things. Is it acceptable to have an underclass? It's that kind of stuff that these are the conversations that we need to really have. The idea that we allow people to fail, and put it always back on them, rather than create the circumstances for people to actively flourish, or create a system to engage people to flourish, is ethically and morally wrong. It's funny, people think that these things are too big now and they can't be fixed, but they can. The goal of a doctor is to help people. They say do no harm, but do some good. Commonly people will say to me, if I sort of complain about something, they'll say, oh, at least we're not as bad as. And I think, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Why can't we be the best?